When I wouldn't hand over my inheritance to my mother, she summoned me to a family gathering. Upon my arrival, they had attorneys prepared to force me to sign it away. Yet the instant they presented me the documents, I just grinned and replied, "Funny, I brought someone, too." Imagine getting the shock of your life. Not from a stranger, but from your own mother. The day after your grandfather's funeral. She looked me in the eye and demanded I sign away everything he'd left me. When I said no, all hell broke loose. And then, this morning, I got a text about a family meeting. What I walked into next wasn't just a meeting. It was an ambush. And I was standing right in the crosshairs. My grandfather Harold wasn't just family. He was my hero. Seriously, most kids had posters of pop stars on their walls. Me? I had a framed photo of my grandpa standing so proudly in front of his hardware store. He built that empire from nothing, starting with just a small loan and transforming it into a chain across 3 states. "Nothing worth having comes easy, Amber," he'd tell me, his voice always this perfect blend of warmth and wisdom. My mother, Patricia, though, she never quite grasped the value of hard work. As Grandpa's only daughter, she grew up expecting everything to be handed to her. Even as a little kid, I remember her rolling her eyes whenever he talked about building character through adversity. My earliest memories are of her explosive shopping sprees, our living room overflowing with designer bags, always followed by hushed, tense arguments between her and Grandpa about money. By the time I was 12, our family finances were a disaster. Mom cycled through credit cards like seasons, maxing one out before moving to the next. My stepfather Craig totally enabled her. He definitely benefited from her spending, but mostly confronting her just led to these explosive, screaming fights. They refinanced our house twice before I even graduated high school. But Grandpa took a special interest in me. He noticed how I'd linger in his office during family gatherings, totally fascinated by the ledgers and business reports scattered across his desk. When I was 13, he started taking me to his main store on Saturdays. "You've got a good head for business, kiddo," he said one afternoon, beaming, after I helped him spot a discrepancy in the quarterly orders. "You notice things others miss." Those Saturdays became sacred to me. He taught me how to analyze profit margins, negotiate with suppliers, and most importantly, how to treat employees with respect. "Your business is only as good as the people who run it when you're not there," he'd say. And he meant it. When it was time for college, Grandpa sat me down for a serious talk. "What are you thinking, Amber?" he asked. "Business administration," I replied without a second of hesitation, with a minor in accounting. His eyes crinkled with pride. "Smart choice. Education is the one thing nobody can take from you." He offered to pay my tuition in full. But my mother? She intercepted. Suddenly, she was calling him daily, complaining about their mortgage. Rachel's medical bills, which were minor and mostly cosmetic. Let's be real, and Jason's special needs. I like how he needed a car for his 16th birthday. The money Grandpa had set aside for my education mysteriously became family funds. I was heartbroken, but I just took out student loans instead and worked part-time at a local bookstore. Grandpa would still visit me there, pretending to browse the business section, always slipping me envelopes of cash. "Don't tell your mother," he'd whisper, looking over his shoulder. "This is between us." As his health began to decline, our conversations grew more serious, more poignant. I was 27 when he was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. During one hospital visit, after the nurses had left us alone, he gripped my hand with surprising strength. "I've watched how you handle money, Amber," he said, his voice raspy. "You're the only one in this family who truly understands its value." "I learned from the best," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to push back the lump forming in my throat. He sighed heavily, just the name Patricia a heavy weight. "Your mother has never understood that money isn't just for spending. It's responsibility. It's security. It's opportunity." He looked at me with this intense clarity, a look I'll never forget. "I've made arrangements. You'll be taken care of." "Grandpa," I whispered, "don't talk like that." "You're going to be fine. Listen to me," he insisted, his grip tightening. "When the time comes, there will be pressure. Standing your ground won't be easy." I promised him I would honor whatever decisions he'd made, though I didn't fully grasp the weight of his words then. In his final months, he shared stories I'd never heard before about my mother's teenage years. How she'd stolen from his wallet, forged his signature on checks, Even emptied a savings account he'd set up for her college fund just to buy a car. I failed her somehow, he confessed during our last real conversation. Gave her too much, perhaps, or not enough of what truly mattered. He squeezed my hand, a silent comfort. But you, Amber, you turned out just right. A week later, he slipped into a coma. 3 days after that, surrounded by family, Harold James Matthews took his final breath. I swear, I felt a piece of myself leave with him. The reading of the will happened 2 weeks after the funeral. We gathered in Mr. Peterson's law office, this wood-paneled room that smelled of leather and old books, super formal. My mother arrived, dressed head to toe in designer black, her eyes hidden behind huge sunglasses, even though the lighting inside was dim. Rachel and Jason sat stiffly on either side of her, with Craig hovering protectively behind them. Me? I sat alone across the table. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and began reading. The first few minutes were standard. Small bequests, charitable donations, items for distant relatives, a generous pension for his longtime housekeeper. Nothing surprising, really. Then came the bombshell. And I mean, it rocked the room. And to my granddaughter, Amber Nicole Matthews. Mr. Peterson read, his voice clear. I leave the remainder of my estate, including my business holdings, investment portfolios, real estate properties, and personal effects, with the exception of items specifically designated to others in this document. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there, absolutely frozen, the sheer magnitude of what had just happened washing over me in waves. It felt surreal. Then my mother ripped off her sunglasses. This is a mistake, she hissed, her eyes blazing. Read it again. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses, completely unfazed. There's no mistake, Mrs. Carter. Your father was very specific in his instructions. That's impossible. She slammed her hand on the table, a loud thud echoing through the quiet room. I'm his daughter. His only child. Mom, please, I whispered, acutely aware of the lawyer's uncomfortable expression. Don't you, Mom? She snapped, spinning on me. You knew about this, didn't you? You manipulated him when he was sick and vulnerable. Rachel jumped in, her voice trembling. Honestly, I couldn't tell if it was genuine emotion or a performance. Grandpa wouldn't do this to us. He loved us all equally. Jason just remained silent, staring at his hands, looking utterly shell-shocked. Mr. Peterson interjected firmly. Mr. Matthews was of sound mind when he updated his will 6 months ago. He was very clear about his wishes. My mother's face contorted with pure rage. 6 months ago? When he was already sick? This proves it was manipulation. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. My mother threatened to contest the will. Craig made vague, menacing comments about family loyalty. Rachel sobbed dramatically, turning on the waterworks. And throughout it all, I sat in stunned silence, the incredible weight of my grandfather's trust pressing down on me, heavy and daunting. In the parking lot afterward, my mother actually cornered me against my car. This is a simple fix, Amber, she said, her voice suddenly calm and unnervingly reasonable. Just transfer everything to me, and I'll make sure everyone gets their fair share. I looked into her eyes, so similar to mine in color, but completely devoid of any warmth. I need time to process this, Mom. What's there to process? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It was a cold, calculated mask. It's family money. It belongs to all of us. That's not what Grandpa wanted. My voice was quiet but firm. Her expression hardened immediately. You have no idea what he wanted. I was his daughter for 52 years. You were just a distraction in his old age. Ouch. Those words stung more than I wanted to admit. I'm not making any decisions right now. Don't be selfish, Amber. Your brother needs college tuition. Rachel's drowning in debt. Craig and I are behind on the mortgage again. I paused. I thought you paid off the mortgage with the money Grandpa gave you last year. She waved dismissively. Things happen. Expenses come up. Like the brand new Mercedes sitting in their driveway, I thought, but didn't say. The hypocrisy was just breathtaking. The next few days brought a relentless barrage of calls and texts. Rachel, my sister, actually called me a greedy bitch in a family group chat. Craig left these threatening voicemails about doing the right thing. Even my mother's friends, women I'd known since childhood, started sending messages expressing their disappointment in my character. It felt like the whole world was against me. Jason, though. Jason was the only one who approached me differently. He showed up at my apartment 3 days after the will reading, hands in his pockets, looking so much younger than his. 18 years. I don't care about the money, he said quietly, his gaze earnest. But Mom's on the warpath. I've never seen her like this. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle, I told him, and I truly meant it. He just shrugged. Just wanted to warn you. She's not going to let this go. A week later, my mother arranged a casual family dinner. The moment I arrived, she launched into this obviously prepared speech about family unity and generational wealth. Your grandfather built his business for all of us, she insisted, cutting into her steak with precise, almost surgical movements. He never intended for one person to control everything. Then why did he write the will that way? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because you manipulated him, Rachel snapped, her face flushed. We all know you were his favorite. You used that. That's not true. My voice came out smaller, weaker than I intended. Then prove it, my mother said, a cold glint in her eyes. Sign the money over to me and I'll distribute it fairly. I can't do that. Can't or won't. Craig interjected, his tone sharp. Both. I stood up, my dinner untouched. I promised Grandpa I would respect his wishes. His wishes were for the family to be taken care of, my mother shouted as I headed for the door. And I intend to honor that, I replied, forcing my voice to be steady. Just not the way you're demanding. I left with their angry, accusing voices following me down the driveway. That night, alone in my apartment, I cried for hours. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I was losing my family in the agonizing process of honoring my grandfather's last wish. The weeks following the will reading were, hands down, some of the hardest of my entire life. What started as direct confrontation quickly morphed into something far more insidious, a coordinated campaign to emotionally break me down. My phone became a portal for guilt and manipulation. Aunts I barely spoke to suddenly called, telling me how disappointed they were. Cousins sent passive-aggressive texts asking why I hated the family. Even my mother's church friends reached out, quoting scripture about honoring parents and the evils of greed. Family takes care of family became my mother's mantra, repeated in daily voicemails once I stopped answering her calls. Rachel took a different approach, weaponizing our shared childhood. Remember when Mom sold her engagement ring to pay for your braces? She texted one morning. Oh, I remembered. I also remembered that Grandpa had given Mom the money for those braces in the first place, which she'd spent on a spa weekend before being forced to sell the ring. The pressure came from totally unexpected directions, too. My mother somehow got my coworkers' contact information and started calling my office. My boss, Barbara, called me into her office after a particularly disruptive day. Amber, is everything okay at home? She asked, genuine concern etched on her face. I explained the situation as professionally as I could, trying to keep my voice steady. Take some personal days if you need them, she offered. Bless her heart. And let reception know not to put your mother's calls through anymore. Social media became absolutely unbearable. My mother and Rachel posted vague, thinly veiled statuses about toxic family members and financial abuse of elders. Distant relatives, completely clueless, commented with supportive emojis, never knowing they were taking sides in a battle they didn't understand. I made the mistake of checking my mother's Instagram one evening and found photos of her shopping for a brand new car. Treating myself through the grief, our self-care, the caption read. This was the same week she'd texted me about being unable to pay utility bills. My suspicions soared. So I did something I never ever thought I'd do. I asked Mr. Peterson for records of my grandfather's financial support to my mother over the years. What I discovered was staggering. In the 5 years before his death, Grandpa had given my mother over $300,000, supposedly for house payments, medical bills, and education costs. And the amounts had increased dramatically in his final year. Your grandfather was very generous with your mother, Mr. Peterson noted diplomatically. Some might say excessively so. That night, I received the most disturbing call yet from Craig, my stepfather. His words were slurred, unmistakably from alcohol. You think you're so smart, don't you? He growled. Little Miss Perfect with her business degree. Your mother is having panic attacks because of you. I'm sorry she's struggling, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, trying to find some shred of decency in the conversation. No, you're not. You've always been selfish. Harold spoiled you rotten. That's not fair. No, what's not fair? Your mother deserves that money. She had plans for it. What plans? I asked before I could stop myself. He laughed bitterly. The house in Naples, for starters. We put a deposit down 6 months ago when the old man's doctor gave us the timeline. I felt physically ill. They were spending his money before he was even dead. It was going to be ours anyway, he slurred. Until you got involved. The call ended with veiled threats about legal consequences and family secrets. I sat in my darkened apartment, shaking. For the first time, I actually considered giving in, just to end the nightmare. The money wasn't worth this emotional torture. Ethan found me like that, curled up on the couch in the dark. My boyfriend, being the amazing person he is, had used his emergency key after I'd missed our dinner date and wasn't answering texts. "Talk to me," he said, pulling me into his arms. All of it. I poured everything out, the inheritance, the relentless pressure, Craig's sickeningly threatening call. Maybe I should just give them what they want, I concluded, utterly exhausted, my voice hollow. Ethan listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned, his eyes fixed on mine. When I finished, he took my hands in his. "Amber, this isn't just about money anymore," he said gently, but with a firmness that pierced through my despair. "This is emotional abuse. And from what you've told me about your grandfather, giving in now would betray everything he was trying to protect you from. Your family is showing you exactly why Harold made the choice he did." His voice was so kind, yet so unwavering. He knew this would happen. He was preparing you for it. That night marked a profound turning point for me. Ethan helped me set up an appointment with Samantha Reed, a lawyer friend of his who specialized in estate disputes. "Just to understand your options," he insisted. Samantha's advice was clear, concise, and frankly, a bit terrifying. Document everything, restrict contact, and prepare for a potential legal battle. "Based on what you've told me," she said during our consultation, her gaze direct, "your mother may be planning something more aggressive than just guilt trips. The inheritance is significant enough that she might take formal action." "What kind of action?" And I asked, my heart pounding. "She might claim undue influence, suggesting you manipulated your grandfather, or she might argue he wasn't of sound mind when he updated his will." "He was perfectly lucid," I protested, my voice rising. "I believe you," she reassured me, "and the medical records will likely support that. But we should be prepared." Following Samantha's advice, I started recording phone calls, which is legal in our state with one-party consent, and saving every single message and email. I even installed security cameras at my apartment after finding my mother's car parked outside one evening, just sitting there, watching. The emotional toll was immense, truly immense, but Ethan's unwavering support kept me grounded. "Your grandfather saw something in you," he reminded me during a particularly low moment. "The strength to handle this. Trust his judgment." His words echoed in my mind when 3 weeks after the will reading, I received a text from my mother that would change everything. "Family meeting tomorrow at 3. Time to resolve this situation once and for all. Be there." The text message sat on my phone screen like a landmine, ticking, waiting. That text message, "Family meeting tomorrow at 3. Time to resolve this situation once and for all. Be there." No please, no question mark, just a cold, hard command. So typical Patricia. I showed it to Ethan over dinner that night, my stomach churning. "She's planning something," I said, pushing my pasta around the plate. "This isn't just another guilt session." Ethan took my phone, studying the message with a grim expression. "Are you going to go?" "I don't know," I admitted. The thought of another confrontation made my stomach twist into knots. Part of me just wanted to ignore it, to hide. Another part felt like I needed to face this head-on or it would never, ever end. "What does Samantha think?" I'd forwarded the message to my lawyer as soon as I received it. "She's concerned. Says it has the feel of an ambush." Ethan reached across the table, taking my hand, his touch reassuring. "Then don't go alone. I'll come with you." "No," I said firmly, surprising even myself with the certainty in my voice. "If I bring you, they'll just say I'm hiding behind my boyfriend. This needs to be me facing my family." "Then at least have Samantha on standby," he countered. It was good advice, solid advice. That night, I called Samantha and briefed her on the situation. "This timing isn't coincidental," she noted, her voice sharp. "The 30-day period to contest the will expires next week." I hadn't even considered that. "You think they're planning some last-minute legal challenge?" "Possibly," she replied. Or trying to pressure you into a voluntary agreement before that deadline passes? Her voice turned thoughtful. Amber, do you have any documentation of your grandfather's intentions beyond the will itself? Like what? Letters, recordings, witnesses to conversations where he discussed his estate plans? I thought about it. Nothing specifically about the inheritance. But then it clicked. There's George. George Harmon had been my grandfather's best friend for over 40 years. They'd played golf every Thursday, rain or shine, until Grandpa's health made it impossible. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral. It had just been too painful. I'll call him, I decided. He might know something. George agreed to meet me for coffee the next morning. At 78, he still had the straight posture and direct gaze of the retired Marine he was. He enveloped me in a bear hug when I arrived at the cafe. You look like him around the eyes, he said gruffly, a flicker of emotion briefly crossing his weathered face. Harold would be proud of how you're handling yourself. You know about the situation? I asked, surprised. He snorted. Everyone who knew Harold knows. He spent years worrying about what would happen after he was gone. This was news to me. What do you mean? George stirred his black coffee thoughtfully. Your grandfather made his fortune through hard work and smart decisions. Watching Patricia squander everything he gave her, it broke his heart. Did he tell you he was leaving everything to me? Not specifically, George admitted, but about a year ago, he asked me a hypothetical question. If I had to choose between giving my money to someone who'd waste it or someone who'd use it wisely, what would I do? George smiled sadly. We both knew who he was talking about. I swallowed hard. Mom thinks I manipulated him. Harold wasn't a man who could be manipulated, George stated flatly, his voice firm. He was stubborn as a mule and twice as smart. If he left you his estate, it's because that's exactly what he wanted to do. Do you know if he kept any records or letters explaining his decision? George's expression changed subtly. As a matter of fact, he reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a thick, aged envelope. He gave me this about 3 months before he passed. Said, if there was ever any question about his wishes, I should give it to you. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten in my grandfather's neat script, dated just after his diagnosis. It detailed his reasoning for the inheritance decision, his profound concerns about my mother's financial irresponsibility, and his absolute confidence in my judgment. The final paragraph brought tears to my eyes. Amber, if you're reading this, it means my fears about Patricia's reaction were justified. Stand firm. This decision wasn't made lightly or in haste. But after years of watching both of you make choices about money, my legacy isn't just financial. It's about values. You're the only one who truly shares them. I love you all, but you're the only one I trust. I carefully folded the letter and returned it to the envelope, clutching it tight. Thank you for keeping this, George. There's more, George said, his voice lowering. Harold kept a journal the last few years, documented every loan to Patricia, every conversation about money. It's in his safe at the house. I admitted. I haven't gone through his personal things yet. It's been too hard. Might be time, he suggested gently, especially before this family meeting. He reached across the table, his hands steady on mine. And Amber, don't go alone tomorrow. After saying goodbye to George, I called Samantha again. This time we developed a real plan. I'll be in my car outside the house, she decided. If anything feels wrong, text me the word now, and I'll come in. And her final, crucial advice. If they try to pressure you into signing something, don't sign anything, period. No matter what they say, what they threaten, or how they make you feel, any document can wait for proper legal review. That afternoon, I drove straight to my grandfather's house. My house now, though I hadn't even moved in. It felt strange, almost illicit, using my key, walking through the quiet rooms where so many family memories lived. In his study, I found the safe behind the painting of his store, exactly where he'd always kept it. The combination was my birth date, something only I would know he'd use. Inside, among insurance policies and property deeds, was a leather-bound journal. Just as George had said, it contained meticulous records of my mother's financial requests and my grandfather's increasingly reluctant, frustrated responses. The final entry was dated just weeks before his death. Gave Patricia $15,000 today for what she claims are Jason's college application fees. Ridiculous amount, but I'm too tired to argue. This will be the last time. Arrangements are finalized with Peterson. Amber will face challenges, but she has what Patricia never developed: strength of character. I pray I've made the right choice for all of them. I photographed the journal entries, every single one, and sent them to Samantha, who responded immediately, "This is exactly what we needed." "Bring the journal tomorrow," she instructed, "but don't show it unless absolutely necessary." That night, preparing for the meeting, a strange, powerful calm settled over me. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I wasn't questioning my grandfather's decision or my right to honor it. I was simply determined to face whatever tomorrow brought, head on. Ethan watched me pack my documents: the will, the letter from George, the journal. "You're different tonight," he observed, a soft smile on his face. "I'm done feeling guilty," I replied, zipping up my portfolio. Grandpa made his choice for a reason. It's time I fully accepted the responsibility that comes with it. He kissed my forehead, a silent reassurance. "Call me when it's over. I'll be thinking about you." "I know." I managed a small smile. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck," he said with absolute conviction. "You have something better." He was right. As I laid out my clothes for tomorrow's confrontation, my phone chimed with one last text from my mother. "Bring your ID and banking information. We'll need it for the paperwork." The trap was set, all right. But this time, I wouldn't be the one caught in it. The next day dawned bright and clear, almost mockingly cheerful for what I knew would be the toughest confrontation of my life. I dressed carefully, a navy blue blazer over a simple white blouse, professional and composed. I wanted to channel my grandfather's business demeanor, not appear as the emotional target my family expected. Samantha called as I was preparing to leave. "Remember," she cautioned, "stay calm no matter what they say. Emotional reactions can be used against you." "I'm ready," I assured her, though my stomach was doing acrobatic flips. "I'll be parked down the street. Text if you need me." My mother's house, the one I'd grown up in, looked deceptively normal. As I pulled into the driveway precisely at 3:09 p.m., I noticed the curtains were drawn, which was unusual for the afternoon. I took a deep breath, grabbed my leather portfolio, the one holding all the documents I'd gathered, and approached the front door. I didn't even need to knock. It swung open as I reached the porch, revealing my mother's perfect hostess smile. You know, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "Amber, right on time!" Her voice was honey-sweet. Another warning sign. She was wearing a designer dress I'd never seen before, hair freshly colored and styled. "Everyone's waiting in the living room." The atmosphere inside was suffocating. Rachel and Jason sat stiffly on the sofa, neither meeting my eyes. Craig stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, watching me with undisguised hostility. But what truly confirmed my suspicions were the two strangers. Middle-aged men in expensive suits, seated in the armchairs usually reserved for family. "Amber," my mother gestured grandly, a theatrical flourish. "This is Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels. They're helping us sort out this unfortunate situation." I nodded politely, but didn't offer my hand. I wasn't told this would involve lawyers. "Not lawyers, exactly," my mother corrected smoothly, a touch of irritation in her voice. "Just advisors to help with the paperwork? Please sit down." The only available seat was a hard-backed chair, positioned strategically to face everyone else. An interrogation setup, if I'd ever seen one. I took it without comment, placing my portfolio on my lap. "Would you like some coffee?" My mother was playing the perfect hostess, another act I recognized from childhood gatherings where appearances mattered more than actual feelings. "No, thank you," I replied, my voice steady. "I'd like to understand the purpose of this meeting." Mr. Wilson cleared his throat, leaning forward with practiced concern. "Amber, your family is very worried about the burden that's been placed on you. Managing a substantial estate is complex and stressful, especially for someone your age. I appreciate the concern, but I've been working in financial management for 7 years." I replied evenly, meeting his gaze. "I'm quite capable." "Of course you are, sweetheart," my mother interjected with a patronizing smile. "But this is about family unity. Your grandfather would have wanted us all to benefit." "If that were true," I said, "he would have written his will differently." Rachel piped up then, her voice trembling in what I instantly recognized as her theater voice. She'd done community productions since high school. "Amber, you know, Grandpa wasn't thinking clearly at the end. The medication, the pain, he wasn't himself. He was lucid until the final week, I countered, my voice firm. And the will was updated 6 months before that. Mr. Daniels, the other advisor, opened a leather briefcase. We've prepared a simple solution that respects your grandfather's wishes while ensuring family harmony. My mother beamed at him gratefully. They've been so helpful, Amber. This way everyone wins. What exactly are you proposing? I asked, though I already knew. A voluntary redistribution, Mr. Wilson explained, removing documents from his own briefcase. You would transfer the business holdings and investment accounts to your mother as the most experienced family member while retaining a generous portion for yourself, say 20%. I almost laughed. And the real estate properties? Those would be liquidated with proceeds divided among all family members, Mr. Daniels continued smoothly. Your brother has college expenses approaching, and your sister has medical needs. I looked at Jason, who squirmed uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. What medical needs does Rachel have? What? That's private. My mother snapped, her pleasant facade cracking slightly. Craig stepped forward then, a menacing shadow. Look, Amber, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These gentlemen have also prepared documents to contest the will if necessary. On what grounds? I kept my voice steady, my heart pounding a rhythm of defiance. Undue influence, Mr. Wilson stated, his voice flat. Your grandfather was elderly and ill. You spent an unusual amount of time alone with him. A judge might find that concerning. The accusation stung exactly as intended. My mother pressed the advantage. No one wants a messy court battle, Amber. Think about what that would do to Grandpa's reputation. To have his mental capacity questioned in public records? I felt a momentary wave of doubt. Would Grandpa want his private affairs dragged through court? The self-doubt must have shown on my face because my mother's expression turned triumphant. We're just asking you to do the right thing, she continued, nodding to Mr. Wilson, who slid a thick document across the coffee table toward me. Sign this today and we can put this unfortunate situation behind us. We'll still be a family. Jason finally spoke, his voice small, hesitant. Please, Amber, Mom says we might lose the house if this doesn't get resolved. The manipulation was so transparent, so blatant, it instantly restored my resolve. May I see the documents? I asked, my voice now completely firm. Mr. Daniels passed them over with a satisfied smile. Take your time. It's a standard transfer of assets. Everything's clearly labeled. I accepted the papers, my expression neutral, as I flipped through the pages. As I suspected, it was far from standard. It was a complete surrender of everything my grandfather had built, with nothing but vague, empty promises in return. The room fell silent as I continued reading, the tension building with each passing minute. My mother fidgeted with her new bracelet, another recent purchase, I noted, while Rachel whispered something to Craig. Finally, I closed the document and looked up. 5 pairs of eyes watched me expectantly, a hungry anticipation in their gaze. Well? My mother prompted, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. Do you need a pen? I smiled then. Not the anxious, people-pleasing smile they were accustomed to seeing from me, but my grandfather's smile. The one he wore when closing a particularly advantageous business deal. Before I make any decisions, I said calmly, deliberately, I'd like to understand something. I looked directly at my mother. Mom, when did you put a deposit down on the house in Naples? Her face paled visibly. What are you talking about? Craig mentioned it during our last phone call, I continued, watching her carefully. He said you put a deposit down 6 months ago when Grandpa's doctor gave you his timeline. Rachel shot Craig a furious, panicked look. He cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to backtrack. I never said that. I recorded the call, I replied simply, letting the words hang in the air. Just as I've documented every threat, every manipulation attempt, and every lie about financial hardship while you've been shopping for luxury items. Mr. Wilson straightened his tie nervously, his concerned advisor facade crumbling. Miss Matthews, family disputes can get emotional. Let's focus on the documents. Yes, let's, I agreed, reaching for my portfolio. I have some documents of my own. That was when my mother stood abruptly, a vein throbbing in her neck. This is ridiculous. You're trying to steal what should rightfully be mine. Like you stole from Grandpa? I asked quietly, opening my portfolio. January, I cut her off, my voice steady, pulling out a page. You told him you needed $30,000 for Jason's medical treatments. Jason wasn't sick. The money went to your cruise and Craig's golf membership. I extracted the journal entry documenting this, along with a photo I'd found of my mother on that very cruise, posted to Instagram with the caption, "Best birthday gift ever, blessed." Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels exchanged deeply uncomfortable glances. May 8th, I continued, my voice unwavering. You claimed Rachel needed emergency dental surgery. $20,000. Rachel was in Cancun that weekend. She posted the pictures herself. Rachel had the grace to look profoundly ashamed, her face burning crimson. I laid out document after document, calmly and methodically exposing years of financial manipulation. Grandpa kept records of everything, Mom. Every lie, every manipulated loan, every broken promise to repay. My mother's face had transformed from shock to absolute, venomous fury. How dare you? After everything I've done for you? Like using the money Grandpa gave you for my college tuition on your spa retreats? I interjected, holding up another document. That's in here too. The advisors were now looking distinctly uncomfortable, eyes darting between my mother and me. Mr. Wilson leaned toward my mother, whispering urgently. She waved him off, a snarl on her lips. You ungrateful little... I interjected calmly, this meeting is over. I stood, gathering my documents. Unless you'd like me to call in my actual lawyer who's waiting outside. She's particularly interested in these gentlemen who are presenting themselves as legal advisors while pressuring me to sign documents under false pretenses. Mr. Daniels closed his briefcase hurriedly, already halfway out of his seat. Mrs. Carter, you didn't mention any existing litigation. There isn't any, I clarified, my gaze piercing. Yet. The implied threat hung heavy in the air. My mother's carefully constructed plan was collapsing around her, and the rage in her eyes was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. This isn't over, she hissed, a low, dangerous growl. Actually, it is. I picked up their document, the one they wanted me to sign, and handed it back to Mr. Wilson. I won't be signing this, or any variation of it. Grandpa made his wishes clear, and I intend to honor them. He was my father. She nearly screamed, tears of fury welling in her eyes. Everything he built should have been mine. That's exactly why it isn't, I replied softly, my voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the room. He built it to last, Mom, not to be squandered. As I turned to leave, Jason suddenly stood up. Amber, wait! Everyone froze. Jason, who had been the silent observer throughout this whole confrontation, caught between loyalty to our mother and what he now knew was right. I'm sorry, he said, his voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I didn't know about any of this. The lies, the manipulation. I just thought... He looked at our mother, pain evident in his expression. I thought Amber was being selfish. But it's not true, is it, Mom? Patricia's expression hardened, a mask of cold fury. Sit down, Jason. No. His hands were shaking, but his voice remained steady, resolute. I don't want any part of this. To everyone's shock, he walked across the room, stood right beside me. I'm leaving with Amber. Craig started forward threateningly, his face contorted. You ungrateful little... I'd be careful about what you say next, I interrupted, holding up my phone. This entire conversation is being recorded. That stopped him cold. The advisors were already inching toward the door, sensing the legal quicksand they'd wandered into. I looked at my mother one last time, feeling an unexpected wave of pity beneath my anger. Goodbye, Mom. With Jason beside me, I walked out of the house that had once been my home, leaving behind the trap that had been set for me, a trap that had, in the end, caught its creators instead. As Jason and I stepped onto the porch, the front door slammed behind us with such force that the porch light rattled. I flinched but kept walking toward my car where Samantha was already emerging, alerted by my prearranged signal text. Are you okay? She asked, her eyes scanning Jason uncertainly. This is my brother, I explained, pulling him gently forward. He's coming with us. Jason looked between us, confusion evident on his face. Who are you? Samantha Reed, Amber's attorney. She extended her hand professionally. I take it the meeting didn't go as your mother planned. A hysterical laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. You could say that. We didn't have time for more explanations. The front door burst open again, revealing my mother, her face completely contorted with rage. Jason, get back in this house right now. Jason stiffened beside me, but he didn't turn around. I can't, Mom. Not after what I just heard. They're manipulating you. She shrieked, pointing wildly at us. Everything Amber said was a lie. Samantha stepped forward slightly, her demeanor calm but authoritative. Mrs. Carter, I strongly advise you to go back inside. Any further harassment will be documented and may impact future proceedings. Who the hell are you? My mother demanded, eyes blazing. I'm Miss Matthews' legal counsel. And unlike your advisors, I actually am a licensed attorney. That finally gave my mother pause, though her eyes still burned with fury. Behind her, I could see Mr. Wilson and Mr. Daniels practically sprinting to their cars, briefcases clutched tightly. Rats abandoning the sinking ship just as I'd predicted. This isn't over, my mother repeated, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. It is, Samantha countered firmly. Any attempt to contest the will now would be seen as vexatious litigation, given the evidence Amber has compiled. You'd be risking court costs and potential sanctions. My mother's gaze shifted to Jason, a chilling coldness in her eyes. And you. Don't bother coming back if you leave with her. Jason visibly flinched, a raw wound, but he held his ground, his small frame unwavering. Fine. Without another word, my mother retreated inside, slamming the door once more. The three of us stood in charged silence for a moment before Samantha spoke. Let's get out of here. We can talk somewhere else. 20 minutes later, we were seated in a quiet corner of a cafe several miles away. Jason stared into his untouched coffee, looking completely shell-shocked. I can't believe she just disowned me. Just like that. She's bluffing, I said, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. She'll calm down eventually. You don't know that, he countered, finally looking up, his eyes vulnerable. You didn't see how she was after the will reading when you weren't around? It was like she became obsessed. The only thing she talked about was getting her money back. Samantha, who had been making notes on her tablet, interjected gently. Jason, did your mother discuss specific plans for the inheritance? Beyond general statements about family sharing? He hesitated, loyalty warring with his new painful understanding. She had a whole list. The house in Naples was just the beginning. She wanted to buy into some exclusive country club, get a boat, renovate the entire house. And my college tuition? I prompted softly, my heart aching for him. Was that ever mentioned? His eyes dropped back to his coffee, a profound sadness in them. Once, when I asked about it specifically, she said you were smart enough to get scholarships, and that you'd probably try to take over Grandpa's business anyway, so you didn't need help. The casual cruelty of it stung, but didn't surprise me anymore. What about your college plans, then? She kept saying not to worry, that once she had control of the money, everything would be taken care of. A bitter, almost humorless laugh escaped him. I believed her. God, I was so stupid. You weren't stupid, I reassured him, reaching for his hand. You trusted your mother. That's normal. Samantha cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss next steps. The immediate crisis is averted, but we should prepare for potential fallout. I nodded, shifting back into the practical mindset my grandfather had cultivated in me. What do you recommend? File the letter from George and the journal as supplementary documentation with the probate court, she advised. It strengthens your position should there be any challenge. She made another note on her tablet. Consider a restraining order if the harassment continues. A restraining order against my own mother? The thought was surreal, sickening. Only if necessary, she qualified. But the recorded threats should be taken seriously. Jason looked up sharply. What threats? I hadn't told him about Craig's late-night calls or the time I'd found my mother watching my apartment. Some protective instinct had made me shield him from the worst of it. It's been intense, I admitted, but I'm hoping today's confrontation will be the end of it. Samantha looked skeptical but didn't push. At minimum, change your locks and security codes. And Jason, she turned to my brother, her voice gentle, you'll need somewhere safe to stay. The reality of his situation seemed to hit him all at once. I can't go home. I don't have anywhere else to go. Yes, you do, I said without hesitation, the words already forming on my tongue. You'll stay with me. The relief on his face was immediate and heartbreaking. Are you sure? Absolutely, I confirmed. Despite everything, he was still my little brother. My apartment has a pull-out couch with your name on it. Samantha smiled for the first time since the confrontation. That's settled then. Now, Amber, we should discuss your grandfather's estate. Have you given any thought to how you want to proceed? The question caught me completely off guard. I'd been so focused on defending my inheritance that I hadn't fully considered what I would actually do with it. Grandpa wanted me to continue his legacy, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. Not just preserve it, but build on it. The hardware stores are still profitable, Samantha noted, but they're facing increasing competition from big box retailers. You might consider diversification. Jason leaned forward, a sudden flicker of interest replacing his dejection. Grandpa always talked about expanding into eco-friendly building supplies. He said it was the future, but he didn't have the energy to overhaul the business model. I looked at my brother with surprise. I didn't know you paid attention to his business talks. He shrugged, a hint of embarrassment coloring his cheeks. I didn't understand most of it, but I liked listening to him get excited about ideas. Something clicked into place for me then. Jason, what are you planning to study in college? Business administration, he replied instantly, with a focus on sustainable enterprise. Why? I exchanged a quick glance with Samantha, who seemed to read my thoughts and nodded slightly in approval. Because, I said, a plan forming fully in my mind as I spoke, I think Grandpa would want his legacy to include both of us. Jason's eyes widened, hope blossoming in them. What are you saying? I'm saying that while I won't sign over the inheritance to Mom, I do want to share it in a way that honors Grandpa's values. I reached across the table, taking his hand. How would you feel about an internship at Matthews Hardware while you're in college? Learn the business from the ground up, just like Grandpa taught me. Are you serious? Hope flickered across his face, bright and vulnerable. Completely serious. And if you prove yourself, which I know you will, there could be a place for you in the company after graduation. But what about Rachel and Mom? He asked, though I could tell he was already imagining the possibility. I sighed. Rachel made her choice. As for Mom, I won't enable her self-destructive financial habits, but I won't abandon her either. We can set up a modest trust with strict conditions. Samantha nodded approvingly. A properly structured trust would prevent misuse while providing security. We can build in educational provisions for Jason, and even Rachel, if she ever changes her mind. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a sense of profound clarity and purpose. This wasn't just about honoring my grandfather's wishes anymore. It was about carrying forward his values in a way that could truly heal our family, even if that healing took years. So what happens now? Jason asked, looking at me with newfound respect. Now, I replied, my voice filled with newfound confidence. We build something that would make Grandpa proud. The rest of that afternoon passed in a whirlwind of practical arrangements. Samantha helped Jason create a list of personal items to retrieve from our mother's house, with a police escort as a precaution, just in case. I called Ethan, who immediately offered to help Jason settle into my apartment. By evening, sitting in my living room with Jason and Ethan, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The worst confrontation was finally behind us. The path forward wouldn't be easy, I knew that, but for the first time, it felt clear. I just realized something, Jason said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Today's the anniversary of Grandpa's business opening, 47 years ago. I glanced at the calendar, surprised I hadn't noticed. You're right. Do you think he planned it this way? Jason wondered. Setting all this in motion to come to a head today? Ethan chuckled. From what you've told me about him, that sounds exactly like something he would do. I smiled, remembering my grandfather's meticulous nature, his belief that timing was everything, in business and in life. Maybe he did. His final powerful lesson to us. Later that night, after Jason had settled into the pull-out couch and Ethan had gone home, I sat alone in my bedroom, reading through my grandfather's journal again. On the final page after the last entry, I noticed something I'd missed before. A small note in the margin, written in his distinctive, elegant handwriting. The true measure of wealth isn't what you have, but what you do with it. Make it matter, Amber. I traced the words with my finger, feeling his presence as strongly as if he were sitting right beside me. I will, Grandpa, I whispered into the quiet room. I promise. The weeks following that confrontation marked the beginning of a brand new chapter, one filled with both significant challenges and unexpected blessings. The initial aftermath was predictably difficult. My mother launched a brief, furious campaign of text messages, alternating between vicious accusations and tearful pleas. When those failed to move me, she resorted to social media, posting thinly veiled attacks about ungrateful children and family betrayal. I maintained my silence publicly, though each barb stung, cutting deep. Ethan reminded me daily that responding would only feed the drama. "She wants a reaction," he'd say, holding me when the hurt became overwhelming. "Don't give her the satisfaction." The hardware stores required immediate attention. Without Grandpa's steady hand, some managers had grown complacent, and sales were beginning to slip. I took a leave of absence from my marketing job and immersed myself completely in the business operations, visiting each location, learning the specific challenges they faced. Jason accompanied me whenever his class schedule allowed, soaking up knowledge with an enthusiasm that truly reminded me of myself at his age. Watching him interact with employees, asking insightful questions about inventory management and customer retention, I saw clear glimpses of our grandfather, the same analytical mind, the same genuine interest in people. "You're a natural at this," I told him after a particularly productive meeting with suppliers. He ducked his head, pleased but a little embarrassed by the praise. "I just remember things Grandpa said. It helps me know what questions to ask." "That's exactly what makes you good at it, Jason." 3 weeks after the confrontation, Rachel reached out unexpectedly. She asked to meet at a cafe halfway between our homes, neutral territory. I arrived early, claiming a corner table where I could watch the door, still wary of ambushes after everything that had happened. She entered tentatively, looking smaller somehow, without our mother's commanding presence beside her. The designer clothes and perfect makeup remained, but something in her demeanor had changed, softened. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the seat across from me, her voice quiet. "I was surprised you called," I admitted honestly. She fiddled with her napkin, avoiding my eyes. "Mom doesn't know I'm here?" "She'd be furious." "How is she?" I asked, genuinely concerned, despite everything. "Angry, hurt, drinking more than usual." Rachel finally looked up, her eyes filled with a complicated sadness. "She's selling the house. Says she can't afford the mortgage payments anymore." I had expected to feel vindicated by this news. Instead, I felt a complicated, unexpected sadness. "Where will she go?" "Craig's sister has a rental property. It's smaller, but nice enough." She hesitated. "Jason's room is still untouched. She won't admit it, but I think she's hoping he'll come back." "Has she reached out to him?" Rachel shook her head. "Her pride won't let her. Not yet anyway." She took a deep, shaky breath. "I owe you an apology, Amber. I said terrible things. I believed Mom when she said you'd manipulated Grandpa." "You were protecting her," I acknowledged. "I understand loyalty. It wasn't just loyalty." Her voice dropped, a raw honesty I hadn't heard in years. "I was jealous. You were always Grandpa's favorite, and I resented that." When the will was read, she trailed off, blinking back tears. "It felt like final confirmation." I finished for her. She nodded. "But these past weeks, watching Mom spiral, seeing how she's handling things, I've been thinking about why Grandpa made the choice he did, and I get it now." This admission, so utterly unexpected, left me momentarily speechless. "I'm not asking for money," Rachel clarified quickly, sensing my surprise. "That's not why I wanted to meet. I miss my sister. And I miss Jason. Mom's determined to cut you both off forever, but I can't do that." I reached across the table, offering my hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it, her grip surprisingly firm. "Family is complicated," I said, a soft, weary truth. "But it doesn't have to be all or nothing." That meeting marked the beginning of a careful, fragile reconciliation with Rachel. We agreed to keep our contact private for now, protecting her from our mother's anger while leaving the door open for eventual healing. It was a small step, but a profoundly significant one. Meanwhile, the legal aspects of the inheritance were finally settling. Samantha helped me establish 3 separate trusts: an educational fund for Jason, a modest monthly stipend for my mother. Despite her continued hostility, I simply couldn't bring myself to cut her off completely, and a charitable foundation in my grandfather's name, focused on entrepreneurship education for underprivileged youth. The foundation particularly would have absolutely pleased him. Throughout his life, he'd mentored young people with business aspirations but limited resources, offering jobs, advice, and occasionally financial backing. Formalizing this support into a structured program felt like the perfect tribute. 6 months after Grandpa's passing, I finally moved into his house. Our house now, technically. It was a practical decision. My apartment was too small for both Jason and me long-term, and maintaining 2 residences made little financial sense. Still, those nights sleeping in the master bedroom, surrounded by subtle reminders of his presence, were emotionally charged. I kept most rooms as they were, but converted his study into a shared office for Jason and me. We hung his portrait above the fireplace, his kind eyes seemingly approving of our changes. The business truly began to thrive under our combined attention. Jason's research into eco-friendly building materials opened new market opportunities, while my marketing background helped position Matthews Hardware as the progressive alternative to impersonal chain stores. We began a modest expansion, even opening a specialized green building showroom that attracted younger homeowners and environmentally conscious contractors. 1 year after the confrontation, I received an unexpected email from my mother. The subject line simply read, "Truce." The message inside was brief, almost jarringly so. "Amber, I've spent a year being angry. It hasn't changed anything except making me more bitter. Rachel tells me the business is doing well. She says Jason is thriving in college. I miss my children. If you're willing, I'd like to talk. No lawyers, no demands, just talk. Mom." I read it multiple times, searching for hidden manipulations, for any hint of a trap, but finding none. After discussing it carefully with Jason, Rachel, and Ethan, I agreed to meet her at a neutral restaurant, with Ethan nearby just in case. She arrived on time, looking older than I remembered, but more composed, less frantic than during our last encounter. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. Her expression when she saw me was guarded, but not hostile. "Thank you for coming," she said, the exact words Rachel had used months earlier, a strange echo. "How are you, Mom? Managing?" She offered a small, tight smile. "The rental is actually nice. Less to clean. Craig and I—" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her water glass. "Craig and I are taking some time apart. This was news to me." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said softly, genuinely. She shrugged. "It's been coming for a while. Your grandfather used to say Craig brought out the worst in me. I'm starting to think he was right about that too." The acknowledgement, however indirect, that Grandpa had been right about anything related to money was startling progress. "I've been seeing someone," she continued, her eyes still fixed on her water glass. "A therapist, I mean. Rachel's idea. It's helping me understand some things about myself, about why I've always felt so empty, no matter how much I acquired." Our conversation that day wasn't some magical, instant reconciliation. Years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be undone in a single lunch. But it was a beginning. A fragile, hopeful beginning. She asked thoughtful questions about the business, listened without interrupting when I explained the foundation, and looked genuinely pleased when I showed her pictures of Jason's Dean's List certificate. Before we parted, she said something that stayed with me, resonating deep in my heart. "Harold would be proud of you, Amber. Not because of what you've done with the money, but because of who you've become despite how hard I made it for you." It was, I think, the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. The path toward family healing remains long and incredibly uncertain. Some days bring real progress, others trigger old patterns and familiar hurts. My mother and I maintain careful boundaries, a necessary distance, but the open hostility has thankfully faded. She even attended the grand opening of our newest store location, standing quietly in the back during my speech, but staying for cake afterward, which, honestly, felt like a huge win. Jason graduates next year, absolutely ready to step into a full-time role in the company, brimming with ideas. Rachel, inspired perhaps by the foundation's work, has actually begun volunteering at a women's shelter and is talking about going back to school for social work. And Ethan, well, the ring he placed on my finger last month suggests we'll be building our future together, a future I never thought I'd have. As for me, I finally made peace with my grandfather's choice. The inheritance wasn't just about money or even about business acumen. It was about values. It was about building rather than consuming, about using resources to create something meaningful, something that outlasts us. In his journal's final entry, Grandpa wrote that he believed I had what my mother never developed: strength of character. For a long time, that felt like too heavy a compliment to accept. Now, I understand it wasn't meant as praise, but as recognition of something he'd observed over years of watching me grow and make choices, often incredibly difficult ones. Standing up to family pressure was, without a doubt, the hardest thing I've ever done. But through that painful process, I discovered my own capacity. And that's the real inheritance. Not the money or the business, but the profound understanding that true wealth lies in what we create, what we share, and what we leave behind for others. So if you're facing a similar family conflict over money or inheritance, remember that standing your ground doesn't mean closing your heart. Boundaries aren't walls. They're bridges that allow healthy relationships to finally form. Have you ever faced something like this? What would you have done in my place? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know. Don't forget to hit that like button if this journey resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about navigating life's challenging moments. Thank you for listening to my story. And always remember, the most valuable legacies aren't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the good we create.